Welcome to the Deep Dive. We dig into complex topics, sift through research, and pull out the insights you need. Today, we're tackling something huge: the spiritual journey of Japan through its indigenous tradition, Shinto.
It's definitely a big one. Maybe one of our most complex deep dives yet, actually. And that's largely because Shinto, the way of the kami, it's just built differently from many Western religions we might be familiar with.
Right, no single founder, no central holy book like the Bible or Quran.
Exactly. And its history is this fascinating mix of, well, fusion with other beliefs, then periods of conflict, and these big revival movements. So our goal today is to try to understand this indigenous polytheism. We'll focus on some key kami, that major period of blending with Buddhism, and then the later intellectual and political efforts to sort of redefine it.
Okay, so let's start with the absolute basics. Shinto revolves around venerating kami. But, and this feels crucial, kamis aren't just gods like Zeus or Thor, are they?
That's probably the most important distinction to make right off the bat. Yes, kami can be spirits or deities, sometimes personified. But the term also covers these sacred essences that are everywhere. They're in nature.
So not just figures, but forces.
Precisely. Think of the feeling you might get from a really ancient, massive tree or a waterfall, or even a particular mountain like Fuji. That sense of awe, that power, that can be kami. It's a very broad spectrum.
Our sources kept using the word immanence. The divine isn't out there, it's right here, woven into the world.
That's it, exactly. It makes Shinto very world-affirming. The focus is on living in harmony in this life, with nature, with the community, and with the kami.
And to capture just how pervasive this is, there's that famous phrase, Yayoi kami.
Right, the 8 million kami.
Now that's obviously not a literal count, is it?
No, not at all. It's symbolic.
Yeah,
It means they're innumerable, countless. It tells you that basically wherever you go in Japan, there are specific kami tied to that place, that forest, that river bend, that particular village well.
Very local, very specific.
Deeply local. And these kamis are generally concerned with the well-being, the prosperity, the health of their specific communities or natural areas. They're accessible.
And this reverence for nature, for local power, it goes way back, doesn't it, to prehistoric Japan?
Oh, absolutely. If you look in the Jōmon period and then the Yayoi, the earliest religious practices seem very animistic.
Yeah.
Nature worship, fertility rites, and then, especially when wet rice agriculture comes in during the Yayoi period, well, the focus naturally shifts.
To ensuring good harvests, managing the seasons, that makes sense.
It becomes fundamentally tied to the agricultural cycle. The earliest Shinto is very much about that rhythm of planting and harvesting.
And interestingly, the roles of leader and priest were often the same person early on.
Yes, the clan leader was both the political authority and the chief priest. They mediated between the people and the local nature kami, but also the ancestor kami of the clan. Maintaining that divine relationship was part of their job description, you could say.
Okay, so that ancient context helps frame the big creation myth, the story that sort of grounds everything. We're talking Izanagi and Izanami.
The primordial couple, the male who invites and the female who invites. Their story, creating the Japanese islands by churning the ocean, is laid out in the Kojiki and the Nihon Shoki.
Which were compiled in the early 8th century.
Right. And we have to remember, these weren't just collections of folktales. They were state-sponsored projects. Part of their purpose was definitely to legitimize the ruling Yamato clan by tracing their lineage back to these very creator deities. There's a political dimension baked in.
And that myth gives us something incredibly tangible, a direct line to a core Shinto practice we still see constantly.
You mean the purification ritual, Harai.
Exactly. Izanami dies, Izanagi follows her to Yomi, the underworld.
And he's horrified by the decay, the polluted, the Kigara's death. He flees, and the first thing he does when he gets back is bathe in a river to cleanse himself.
And that act becomes the model.
It's the mythological origin point for all Shinto purification. From the simple act of washing your hands and mouth at the entrance to a shrine, the Tamizu ritual, right up to huge national purification ceremonies. It establishes purity as fundamental.
So creating the land and creating the need for purification are intertwined right from the start.
And it's directly from that act of purification,
Yeah.
specifically from Izanagi washing his left eye, that the single most important kami in the entire pantheon emerges, Amaterasu Umikami.
The sun goddess, the great divinity that illuminates heaven. She's really the anchor, isn't she? The supreme kami of the high celestial plane, Takama no Hara.
Absolutely. She embodies light, order, fertility, all the positive forces. And beyond just being the sun, she's also credited in the myths with, well, civilizing gifts. Things like teaching the use of silk, cultivating grains, inventing the loom.
A culture bringer, in a sense.
Yeah, very much so. And she's celebrated liturgically, especially around the winter solstice when the sun's light begins to return, symbolizing that renewal of life.
But what makes Amaterasu so pivotal, perhaps even more than her cosmic role, is that direct link to Japanese political history, the imperial family.
This is absolutely critical. The mythology states she's the direct ancestress of the imperial line. She sent her grandson Ninigi down from heaven to rule the earth.
And gave him the three sacred treasures.
The mirror, the sword, and the jewel, the imperial regalia. This narrative cemented her status as the ultimate patron deity of the Japanese nation and provided the divine justification for the emperor's rule, a line claimed to be unbroken even today.
Okay, but hang on. How did that work during, say, the long periods of the shogunate? The emperor was often politically sidelined in Kyoto, right? Power was with the shogun in Edo or Kamakura. Did people just ignore the myth then?
Well, the political power of the emperor waned dramatically, yes. But the ritual authority, derived directly from Amaterasu, remained potent. Even the most powerful shogun needed the emperor to formally grant him his title. It was a necessary symbolic legitimation.
So the emperor became more of a chief priest than a ruler.
In many ways, yes. His primary role was seen as performing the essential rituals to maintain harmony between the nation, the kami, and the cosmos, rituals stemming from his descent from the sun goddess. The myth was kept alive through that ritual function, even when direct political power was elsewhere.
And speaking of ritual sites, the absolute holiest place in Shinto is dedicated to her, the Ai's Grand Shrine.
Ai's Jingu, yes. Specifically the inner shrine, the Naiku. And it has this extraordinary practice, the Shikinen Sengu.
Where they rebuild the entire shrine complex every 20 years.
Exactly. On an adjacent, identical plot. It's this massive undertaking, a profound statement about renewal. It's not just about upkeep. It's a ritualized cycle of death and rebirth for the dwelling place of the kami, ensuring that the techniques, the spirit, and the connection to Amaterasu are passed down, perpetually fresh and vital. It embodies that core Shinto value of cyclical renewal.
Now, Amaterasu wasn't an only child. There's some significant family drama involving her brothers, Tsukiyomi and Susanoo.
Oh yes, definitely not a harmonious celestial family. Initially, Amaterasu shared the rule of the heavens with her brother Tsukiyomi, the moon god. But then there's this rather grim story.
About the goddess of food.
Right. Tsukiyomi kills the goddess of food, Ukamochi, apparently because he was disgusted by how she produced food, pulling it from her various orifices. Amaterasu was so appalled by this violent act that she banished him.
And that's the mythological origin of day and night. Sun and moon forever separated.
That's the story, yes.
Oh.
Creating that fundamental cosmic division.
And then there's Susanoo. He seems like the real troublemaker. The storm god.
He's definitely the chaotic element. God of storms, sometimes associated with the underworld. The myths portray him as destructive, maybe out of grief for his mother Izanami, maybe just inherently wild. He rampages through the high celestial plane.
Destroying rice fields, uprooting sacred trees.
Exactly. Polluting the divine realm. And his worst offense, the final straw, was defiling Amaterasu's sacred weaving hall. The accounts vary, but often involve throwing a flayed horse through the roof. A truly shocking act of pollution.
And that act of Kiger leads directly to that major cosmic crisis, the heavenly rock cave myth, the Amano Iwato.
Yes. Susanoo's behavior causes Amaterasu, in grief and fear, to retreat into this cave and seal the entrance. And instantly, the world plunges into darkness.
Light's gone. Order breaks down.
Utter chaos. Evil spirits come out. The other kami are desperate. It really underscores how essential Amaterasu's light and order are for everything.
So the other kami gather. They try to plead with her, but she won't come out. They need a plan B.
And they come up with a rather clever one, orchestrated by Omoikani, the kami of wisdom. They stage a sort of divine party outside the cave.
A party to lure out the sun goddess.
Well, a ritual performance. They hang jewels and fine cloth on a sakaki tree. Crucially, they place a large polished mirror facing the cave entrance. And then, the goddess Amenazum performs this wild, ecstatic, even slightly bawdy dance.
Which is considered the origin of Kagura dance, right?
Yes, the sacred ritual dance is performed at shrines. Amenazum's dance gets all the other kami roaring with laughter.
And the noise makes Amaterasu curious.
She cracks open the cave door just a bit and asks, "Why are you all celebrating when the world is dark?"
And they trick her.
They say, "Because we found a goddess even more brilliant than you." And as she peers out, she sees her own reflection in the mirror. Startled by her own radiance, she leans forward.
And they grab her.
A strong kami pulls her out. Another quickly seals the cave entrance behind her, and boom, light is restored. Order returns. And that mirror becomes one of the three sacred regalia, symbolizing Amaterasu herself, her light, and truth.
Okay, so that myth sets the cosmic order. Now let's shift focus from the highest celestial plane down to, well, perhaps the most popular kami in everyday life and business in Japan today, Inari Kami.
Ah, Inari. Yes, Inari is fascinating because this kami really shows how adaptable and, frankly, pragmatic Shinto can be. The name itself, Inari, likely comes from Inanari, meaning rice growing or rice bearer.
So originally an agricultural deity.
Definitely. Worship seems to go back quite early, maybe late 5th century, and was formalized with a shrine on Mount Inari near Kyoto in 711 CE. So fundamentally, a kami of rice and harvests.
But now Inari is associated with business, industry, prosperity in general.
Yeah.
Even modern corporations like Shiseido apparently revere Inari. How did that happen?
It's a perfect example of how kami roles evolve with society. Rice was the basis of wealth for centuries. So the deity of rice naturally became the deity of overall prosperity. As Japan's economy diversified and urbanized, Inari's portfolio just expanded.
From farmers too?
To swordsmiths and merchants in the medieval period, then sake brewers, and eventually, yes, modern businesses looking for success, good fortune, market share. Inari became the go-to kami for worldly success, whatever form that takes.
And the identity of Inari isn't fixed either, is it? Sometimes male, sometimes female?
Right. Inari can be depicted as an old man carrying rice, or a young female food goddess, or sometimes even as a bodhisattva in Buddhist contexts.
Yeah.
Or Inari might be understood as a collective of several kami, often 3 or 5, like Ukenomitama.
Does that fluidity help the popularity?
I think it has to. It allows for different local traditions, different personal connections. It prevents Inari from being locked into one narrow definition, making the kami incredibly accessible to a wide range of people with different needs, highly adaptable.
But the image everyone knows, the thing you see everywhere at Inari shrines, is the fox, the kitsune.
Ah, yes, the foxes. They're iconic. But it's really important to be clear. Inari is not the fox itself.
The foxes are messengers.
Exactly. They are the Utsukai, the divine messengers or servants of Inari. Usually depicted as white foxes, they act as intermediaries between the human world and the deity. You often see statues of them holding something symbolic in their mouths.
Like a key or a jewel.
Right. A key to the rice granary, symbolizing wealth, or a wish-fulfilling jewel. These statues are everywhere at Inari shrines.
Often wearing those little red bibs, the yoder cape.
Yes, those are votive offerings placed there by worshippers asking for favors or giving thanks. And the popular food offering, Inari Zushi, that sweet fried tofu pouch filled with rice.
That's supposedly a favorite food of foxes.
That's the belief, yes. So you offer it to please the messengers, hoping they'll carry your prayers effectively to Inari. It shows this layered interaction. You're dealing with the deity, but also with their powerful agents.
The sheer number of Inari shrines is just mind-boggling. Our research mentions something like 1/3 of all Shinto shrines in Japan, maybe 30,000 or even 40,000.
The estimates vary, but yes, it's a huge proportion. The network is vast. And the head shrine for Shimi Inari Taisha in Kyoto, well, it's become a global tourist icon.
With those thousands of bright red torii gates winding up the mountainside.
Exactly. Each one of those torii is a donation, usually from a business or an individual, given either in thanks for prosperity received or as a prayer for future success. That vibrant vermilion color itself is strongly associated with Inari and is thought to ward off evil. The whole site is just this stunning visual testament to Inari's immense popularity and connection to worldly fortune.
Yeah. Okay, the popularity of Inari and how kami roles adapt leads us right into the next major phase. The arrival of Buddhism in Japan around the 6th century. And instead of conflict for about 1,000 years, we see this incredible fusion. Shinbutsu Shugu.
Yes, the mixing of kami and Buddhas. It's a defining feature of Japanese religious history for centuries. It wasn't just peaceful coexistence, it was a deep integration.
How deep? Like structurally?
Oh, very deep. You had shrine temple complexes called jinguji, where Shinto shrines and Buddhist temples were built literally side by side, or sometimes one within the grounds of the other. And clergy often served both traditions. You might have monks chanting sutras before kami, or Shinto priests participating in Buddhist rites. The lines got very blurry for the average person.
But theologically, that must have presented some challenges. You have Shinto focused on this world, purity, local kami, and then Buddhism with karma, reincarnation, enlightenment, nirvana. How did they reconcile that?
That was the big question. And the answer, developed mainly during the Heian period, was a really sophisticated doctrine called Hanji Suijaku.
Hanji Sujaku. Okay, break that down.
Basically, Hanji means the original ground, or true essence. Sujaku means a manifest trace or local appearance. The theory stated that the ultimate reality, the Hanji, belonged to the universal Buddhas and Bodhisattvas.
So Buddhism held the ultimate truth.
In this framework, yes. The Japanese kami, then, were understood as the Sujaku, the local, provisional manifestations of these Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. They appeared in Japan in a form the Japanese could understand to guide them toward the Buddhist path.
Wow. So Amaterasu, the supreme sun goddess of Shinto, under Hanji Sujaku, she becomes what?
She was often identified with Dainichi Nyorai, the cosmic Buddha, particularly in Shingon Buddhism. Dainichi is also strongly associated with the sun, so it was a neat fit. Or Hachiman, a powerful Shinto god of war and archery, was widely revered as great Bodhisattva Hachiman.
It sounds like a very clever way to absorb the powerful native deities into the Buddhist system without dismissing them.
It was incredibly effective. It allowed Buddhism to spread widely while showing deep respect for the indigenous kami who were already deeply venerated. It was philosophically elegant and politically very pragmatic.
And you mentioned Shingon Buddhism. Its founder, Kukai, also known as Kobo Daishi, he was particularly important in this fusion process.
Hugely important. Kukai, who lived in the late 8th and early 9th centuries, founded the esoteric Shingon school. Shingon developed its own intricate version of this fusion, often called Ribu Shinto, or twofold Shinto, meaning it systematically mapped Shinto deities onto the complex mandalas and cosmology of esoteric Buddhism. And Kukai actively incorporated powerful kami. We mentioned Inari earlier. Kukai specifically chose Inari as a protector deity for his major temple complex, Tuji, in Kyoto.
Ah, so that explains the strong link between Inari and Shingon that continues today.
It's a big part of it, yes. And there's also that famous legend about Kukai establishing his monastic center on Mount Kuya.
The story with the hunter.
Right. The legend says a local mountain kami, disguised as a hunter accompanied by 2 dogs, guided Kukai to the perfect, secluded spot high in the mountains. It shows that even someone bringing this powerful new Buddhist teaching understood the need to acknowledge and cooperate with the ancient spirits of the land. You needed the kami's blessing.
But even with this deep blending, reading between the lines of our sources, there seemed to be some underlying friction, especially around purity.
Yes, that's a subtle but persistent point. While the theology might have merged, some ritual boundaries remained. Shinto's core focus is kiyome, purity, and avoiding kigure, pollution, especially pollution associated with death. Buddhism, on the other hand, deals very directly with death, suffering, funerals.
So Buddhist monks might be seen as ritually impure from a strict Shinto perspective.
In some contexts, yes. Certain very traditional shrines, like the Kasuga Shrine in Nara, associated with the powerful Fujiwara clan, apparently had rules restricting Buddhist monks from entering certain sacred precincts during specific ritual periods because their association with death rites made them potentially polluting.
Interesting. But that didn't stop the elites, like the Fujiwara you mentioned, from fully embracing the system of fusion for their own benefit, right?
Oh, absolutely not. The Fujiwara are a prime example. Their political fortunes were deeply tied to this syncretic system. Their family shrine, Kasuga, housed powerful kami like Takemi Kazuchi, but these kami were simultaneously identified with major Buddhist figures like the Bodhisattva canon.
So praying at Kasuga covered all the bases.
Pretty much. Devotion to the Kasuga deities in both their Shinto and Buddhist forms was believed to secure everything: government positions, good health, clan prosperity. For the Fujiwara, the Kasuga shrine complex effectively was a paradise on earth, a pure land where Shinto harmony and Buddhist enlightenment could be achieved simultaneously through unified devotion. It was high-stakes syncretism.
This incredible blending, Shinbutsu-shugu, shaped Japanese religion for a millennium. But then, starting in the Edo period, a major intellectual current emerged that wanted to undo it all: Kokugaku.
National learning. Yes, this was a really significant movement, driven by scholars who felt that true Japanese culture and spirit had been buried under centuries of foreign influence, primarily Chinese Confucianism and Indian Buddhism.
They wanted to get back to something purely Japanese.
That was the goal. They were primarily philologists, experts in ancient texts. They went back to the earliest Japanese writings, the Kujiki, the Nihon Shoki, the poetry collection Manyushu, and subjected them to intense linguistic and literary analysis.
Trying to excavate an original, uncontaminated Japanese worldview.
Exactly. Their underlying belief, quite nativist, was that Japan was uniquely created by the kami from superior materials, and therefore its indigenous culture and way were inherently purer and better than anything that came from outside.
And the central figure in giving Kokugaku its intellectual weight was Moturi Norinaga.
He's the giant of the movement, lived from 1730 to 1801. Norinaga dedicated most of his adult life, some 35 years, to writing a monumental commentary on the Kojiki called the Kojiki Den. It's massive, 44 volumes.
And it wasn't just about understanding the words, was it? He was trying to reconstruct the mindset of ancient Japan.
Precisely. He wanted to understand how the ancients saw the world before Buddhist metaphysics or Confucian ethics arrived. He argued for what he called the kami no michi, the way of the kami, as something distinct and superior.
How did he define this way of the kami in contrast to, say, Confucianism?
Well, he strongly rejected the rationalism and moralism of Confucian thought. Confucianism emphasized human virtue and rational governance as key to cosmic order. Norinaga said, no, the way was created by the kami, and the kami operates according to a principle called musubi.
Musubi.
Yeah, this mysterious, divine, creative energy. It's powerful, generative, but also unpredictable, even chaotic sometimes. It's beyond human reason or moral judgment. Trying to impose human ethics onto the actions of the kami, as he felt Confucianism did, was fundamentally misguided.
That sounds like a pretty radical critique, especially given that the Tokugawa shogunate relied heavily on Confucian ideology for its bureaucracy.
It was quite subversive, intellectually. And he also championed something else he found in ancient literature, particularly poetry, mono no aware.
The pathos of things, that sensitivity to beauty and impermanence.
Exactly. He saw this deep emotional sensitivity, this poignant awareness of transient beauty, as the true, innate Japanese heart or spirit, magokoro. He contrasted it sharply with what he saw as the artificiality of Chinese rationalism and the overly intellectualized detachment of Buddhism.
Norinaga himself seems to have been mostly a scholar, but his ideas had major political consequences, didn't they? Especially through his followers.
They absolutely did. While Norinaga focused on the ancient texts, followers like Hirata Atsutane really popularized and, frankly, politicized his ideas. Atsutane took Norinaga's emphasis on the kami and the rejection of foreign influence and ramped it up. Atsutane put a much stronger emphasis on the divine lineage of the emperor, tracing it directly back to Amaterasu, making the emperor the rightful divine ruler. He was much more explicitly anti-Buddhist and anti-Confucian. And significantly, Atsutane also developed ideas about the afterlife that Norinaga hadn't really focused on.
Providing a Shinto alternative to Buddhist funerals.
Yes. He taught that after death, Japanese souls went to a hidden realm, the Kakuryo, ruled by the kami Kunanushi. This offered a nativist spiritual destination, challenging Buddhism's dominance over death rites.
So Kokugaku, especially through figures like Atsutane, provided the ideological fuel for restoring imperial power.
It laid the perfect groundwork. The idea of a divine emperor, descended from Amaterasu, ruling a unique and superior nation, according to the ancient way of the kami, this became a powerful rallying cry for those who wanted to overthrow the Tokugawa shogunate and restore the emperor to power in 1868.
And the first thing the new Meiji government did was act on that ideology, right? The forced separation of Shinto and Buddhism, Shinbutsu Bunri.
Immediately. The Meiji Restoration wasn't just a political revolution, it was a cultural and religious one too. That thousand-year-old fusion was deliberately and sometimes violently dismantled.
You say violently. It wasn't just an administrative change.
No, not always. The Shinbutsu Bunri decree triggered a period known as Haibutsu Kushaku, abolish Buddhism and destroy Shakyamuni. In many places, there was actual destruction of Buddhist temples, statues, scriptures. Buddhist symbols were forcibly removed from shrine grounds, monks were forced to laicize, temple lands were confiscated. It was a traumatic severing for many communities.
Driven by this desire to purify Shinto and make it the spiritual foundation of the new, modernizing Japanese state.
That was the explicit goal.
Yeah.
And it led directly into the era of state Shinto.
Okay, state Shinto, 1868-1945. This is where Shinto becomes an arm of the government.
Essentially, yes. The government took control of shrines, standardized rituals, and appointed priests as state officials. The core ideology was Saiseiichi, the unity of ritual and governance. The emperor was officially promoted not just as a descendant of kami, but as a living kami, Arahitogami himself.
So loyalty to the state and reverence for the emperor became a religious duty.
Absolutely mandatory. School children were taught the myths from the Kojiki as literal history. Emperor worship became central to national identity, and this ideology, unfortunately, was used to justify Japanese nationalism and expansionism leading up to and during World War II,
Until 1945.
until the end of the war and the Allied occupation. State Shinto was completely dismantled by the occupation authorities. The emperor made his famous declaration renouncing his divinity, and Shinto was constitutionally separated from the state, returning it to its status as a voluntary, community-based religious tradition.
So after all that turmoil, the fusion, the separation, the state control, the abolition, where does Shinto stand today? That core principle of purity, kiyome, seems to have endured.
It absolutely has. Purity remains central. The idea is that humans are fundamentally pure, but life inevitably involves contact with impurity, kagari. This isn't necessarily sin in the Western sense, but pollution.
And pollution comes from many sources, not just death.
Right. Death is the ultimate kigare, as we saw with Izanagi. But it also includes things like illness, bloodshed, even childbirth. Traditionally involve periods of impurity requiring purification. Basically, anything that disrupts the normal, harmonious flow of life can be a source of kigare.
Which is why the purification rituals, the harai, are so constant.
Exactly. From the individual level, the timizu hand-washing and mouth-rinsing you do before entering shrine grounds to the collective, there are major national purification rites, the harai, held twice a year, usually in June and December.
Where the priests symbolically cleanse the nation?
Yes, they recite ancient prayers and perform rituals to sweep away the accumulated impurities and transgressions of the entire populace, ensuring continued harmony and favor from the kami. It's deeply ingrained.
Which brings us to this interesting situation today. Institutionally, Shinto and Buddhism are separate. But culturally, are they really?
That's the paradox, isn't it? Very few Japanese people today would identify exclusively as Shinto in a religious survey. Yet participation in Shinto practices is massive.
Like visiting shrines at New Year. Hatsmood.
Tens of millions do that. Or participating in local shrine festivals, the Matsuri, buying amulets for good luck or safe travel. People often see these things as cultural traditions, community events, part of being Japanese, rather than strict religious adherence.
It feels like Japanese spirituality has settled into a very practical division of labor between the two traditions.
There's that common saying, right? Born Shinto, the Buddhist.
Yeah, I've heard that. What does it really mean in practice?
Generally, Shinto tends to handle life cycle events associated with beginnings and this world. Birth ceremonies, blessings for children like Shichigo-san, weddings, groundbreaking ceremonies for buildings, blessing new cars, things focused on life, growth, purity, prosperity here and now.
And Buddhism handles
Primarily death and the afterlife. Funerals in Japan are almost exclusively Buddhist affairs. Ancestor veneration rites are usually managed within a Buddhist framework. Because Shinto is so focused on purity and life, death, the biggest source of kegare, is generally entrusted to Buddhism.
So we started this deep dive talking about how intellectuals like Norinaga and later the Meiji state tried so hard to create this pure Shinto by forcibly separating it from Buddhism.
A huge effort based on those nativist ideals.
Yet the everyday reality for many Japanese seems to be this seamless blend where Shinto handles life and Buddhism handles death. The very separation they fought for seems almost irrelevant culturally.
It really makes you question that whole project of purification through separation. Norinaga saw the fusion as contamination. The Meiji government saw it as preventing Shinto from being a strong national ideology. But maybe the enduring cultural practice shows that the kami and the Buddhas actually serve complementary, necessary roles for people.
So here's the final thought to chew on. If Shinto's goal is harmony and thriving in this world, and Buddhism offers a path for navigating death and what comes next, does the average person who embraces aspects of both achieve a kind of practical, spiritual double coverage? Or perhaps, does this persistent cultural blending tell us something deeper, that maybe the kami and the Buddhas, these divine forces in Japan, are just destined to be intertwined in people's lives no matter what doctrines or governments try to impose?
It's a fascinating question. Maybe that cultural compromise, that ability to hold both, isn't a delusion, but actually reflects a different kind of spiritual wisdom, one that values practical harmony and covering all life spaces over strict ideological purity. Perhaps that coexistence itself is the enduring way.